Schubert only started to gain prestige late in his short life. He was mostly known for his songs and piano-based dances, which took prominence in the musical evenings of friends and supporters called Schubertades. These evenings would introduce Schubert's music to an ever-growing public and lead to the most important performances of his life. Schubert's reputation as the romantic answer to both Mozart and Beethoven took off after his premature death at age 31. Notables such as Felix Mendelssohn, Robert Schumann, Franz Liszt, Johannes Brahms, and others found and championed his works at concert halls across Europe. My name is Dr. Dominique Royam, and I'm a music director, conductor, and music communicator here to help you achieve a deeper connection to the music you love. Follow me on social media at Dominique Royam for more content. Let's talk about the life of Schubert. This is the second video in a series about the life of Schubert. If you would like to see the first video, I will link it in the corner and in the description box below. Schubert's social life revolved around his primarily male friends. He had an uncommonly close circle of friends that shaped his career during every stage of his life. More modern biographers have pointed to this and the lack of significant relationships with women to postulate that Schubert was gay. It is an interesting lens from which to view Schubert's life, but is not consistent with the cultural reality of the Biedermeister Vienna at the turn of the 1800s. The words homosexual and gay did not exist, and the cultural realities of those words in the 20th century have no analogs for Vienna of the early 1800s. However, musicologists cannot overlook Schubert's few ties to women and his overwhelming attachment and living arrangements with his male friends. So the current view of Schubert's homosexuality is, maybe, who knows? We are only left with conjecture with the lack of documentation of Schubert's inner thoughts. He did not keep a diary, and the lack of letters written to friends and family. During his early 20s, Schubert chased the dream of being an opera composer. This was a difficult proposition for a German in Vienna because the Italianate style of Salieri and his contemporaries held sway with the opera-going public. Two of his early operas were staged. Die Zwingelbrüder appeared at the Theater am Kantorchor on June 14, 1820, and Die Zauberharfe appeared at the Theater an der Vienne on August 21, 1820. These early acceptances led Schubert to compose upwards of 20 operas and Singspiels, none of which saw the stage. In 1822, Alfonso und Estrella was rejected due to its libretto, written by one of Schubert's friends, Franz von Schober. In 1823, Fairy-Bras was rejected due to an increased interest in the Italian operas of Rossini. Die Verschwonen was prohibited by the censor due to its title, The Conspirators, and Rosamunde was withdrawn after 2 nights due to the poor quality of the play for which Schubert had written the incidental music. After these letdowns, Schubert gave up on trying to be an opera composer, even though it was the fastest and most generally accepted way to make money as a composer at the time. Schubert turned his attentions to larger, more prestigious forms like the symphony. One of the works around this period was Schubert's Unfinished Symphony. The manuscript is dated precisely Vienna, October 30th, 1822, and contains fully orchestrated versions of the first and second movements, along with 9 measures of a scherzo, sometimes called the First Romantic Symphony. Its emphasis is lyricism within the dramatic classical sonata form. It also has daring instrumental colorings, usually found in later Romantic works. The symphony was sent to his friend Joseph Hüttenbrenner so that his brother Anselm might deliver it to the Syrian Musical Society in gratitude for bestowing an honorary membership on him. It languished in Anselm Hüttenbrenner's Graz home for 40 years until it was brought to light and performed by prominent Viennese conductor Johannes Hörnbeck on December 17, 1865, 37 years after Schubert's death. Let's listen to the opening of the first movement of the Unfinished Symphony with the Fulda Symphony Orchestra with Simon Schindler conductor. The cello and the basses begin the symphony, transferring the melody to the clarinet. The upper strings have 16th notes supporting the theme, and the melody swells to encompass all the woodwinds before a sforzando chord halts the theme's progress. Let's listen to that now. ordinarily robust health was shattered in 1823, and he was laid up for more than 2 years with a severe illness. Some musicologists suggest this is the first manifestation of Schubert's syphilis, which would eventually take his life 5 years later. Schubert was well known among friends for his hedonistic ways, including drinking to drunkenness on many occasions, and some marked references to other hedonistic pleasures. This is probably where Schubert contracted syphilis around 1822. Over these 2 years of ill health, Schubert's letters revealed that he thought his health was gone forever, and his life irrevocably changed. At the end of 2 years, he was in good enough health to make the trip to Count Johann Karl Esterhazy's country estate again. The darker side of his personality, cultivated by his extended illness, never left him. One of his most recent biographers, Elizabeth Norman Mackay, postulates that Schubert could have had cyclothymia, a mild form of manic depression. This would account for his well-documented mood, productivity, and behavioral changes. Schubert's excessive drinking, not showing up for both formal and informal scheduled events, abruptly disappearing from events, unkept physical appearance, and his ways of phenomenal productivity, bookended by periods of complete inactivity or depressed output, can all be seen as evidence of depression in Schubert. His friend Braunfeld made several observations on this point of Schubert's complex personality, including, Schubert had, so to speak, a double nature, the Viennese gaiety being interwoven and ennobled by a trait of deep melancholy. Schubert was inwardly a poet and outwardly a kind of hedonist. The beginning of the late 1820s showed Schubert's stubbornness, dissipation, irresponsibility, and occasional arrogance. Most of his friends complained about Schubert failing to appear at scheduled events, from nights at the pub to more important meetings with patrons. Schubert's dual public nature also corresponds to contrasts that begin to crop up in his musical output. The meeting of joy and sorrow happens throughout Schubert's works, but intensifies in the 1820s. Tonal juxtapositions turn from carefree to tragic, modulating between minor and major modes, becoming compositional fingerprints for Schubert. He also mixes the stylistic traits of low or popular art, like his dances and lighthearted songs, with high or more serious art, like string quartets. He also inserts moments of pain and suffering and otherwise light and airy movements in his more mature music. This can be seen in a C major string quintet with the second movement. In an ABA ternary form, the outside A sections are exquisitely tranquil, but the center B section is unsettling in intensity. The A section comes back with a 32nd note pattern in one of the cellos, bringing some of that uncertainty into the tranquility. Let's hear the move from the A section to the B section in this performance by the Chamber Music Society of Lincoln Center. Notice how diverse in tone the sections are from one another. 1820s, publishers started to take notice of Schubert's works. Early on, Schubert enraged his friends by selling his rights to some of his early songs outright to the music publisher Diabelli for much less than what they were worth. By the mid-1820s, Schubert had seen the publication of his A minor, D minor, and G minor string quartets and several works for piano four hands. 1824 saw the publication of Schubert's song cycle Die Schöne Müllerin, the beginning of Schubert's lofty ambition for German Leider. Schubert's negotiations with German publishers reflect a desire for recognition outside of his native Vienna. He also believed that wider publication would bring more sustained musical criticism of his work, bringing it to a larger audience. The sheer number of reviews and foreign publications increased, along with their length and import, reflecting his growing reputation as a composer of more than just songs and dances. Interestingly, every review of Schubert's keyboard and other instrumental compositions mentions Beethoven. The journal Allgemeine Musikalische Zeitung made that comparison repeatedly, mostly to Schubert's benefit. Along with increased publication efforts, Schubert tried to put on concerts of his work. In 1821, Gesellschaft der Musikfreunde finally accepted him as a member of the society, so his works began to be heard on their programs. In 1828, the Gesellschaft donated the use of their hall for a Schubert Academy, or concert of just his works. On March 26, the first anniversary of Beethoven's death, the concert took place. In addition to Schubert's partisan Vogel, who made a rare public appearance singing Leider, most of the performers at this concert were the ones that had premiered Beethoven's late works. In the late fall of 1828, in the midst of all of his productive movement with concerts and publications, Schubert fell ill again. He experienced headaches, fever, swollen joints, and vomiting, and could not keep any food down. Schubert, age 31, died on November 19, 1828, at the apartment of his brother Ferdinand. There are many diagnoses from various researchers trying to shed more light on his passing than the official diagnosis of nervous fever. Tertiary syphilis or complications from the illness are possible, but so is typhoid fever or something else completely. The jury is still out. He requested to be buried next to one of his heroes, Beethoven. He died just a year after serving as a torchbearer at Beethoven's funeral. Schubert's reputation as a composer of important work continued to grow after his death. Preeminent music critic Edward Hanslick said that Schubert seemed to be composing invisibly due to the yet unknown masterworks found and published posthumously. During the 1830s and 40s, music publisher Diabelli released 137 Leider for the first time, and Parisian publisher Simon Richoul issued more than 300 in French translation. His serious instrumental works were also published after his death. The dissemination of Schubert's music benefited enormously from a select group of passionate interpreters that programmed his music in concerts all around Europe. Clara and Robert Schumann were supporters, with Clara programming Schubert's music and Robert publishing in-depth reviews of his works. Liszt had a few famous transcriptions of Schubert songs that were in his arsenal for his tours around Europe, and Brahms also performed Schubert's symphonies at concerts and quoted Schubert melodies in his works. Schubert was hailed as the heir to Beethoven later in life as his more serious compositions came to light. He was also called the father of melody due to his prodigious German Lied output. Finally, a composer of great stature, 20 years after he died, Schubert will always be remembered for the masterworks he wrote in his short 31 years on this earth. Thank you for joining me in this video series about the life of Schubert. Like this video, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel for more. What do you want to learn about next? Leave me a comment down below. You can also support the making of these videos on Patreon. These videos take over 20 hours of research to complete, so Patreon is a great way to show your support. The bibliography for this video can be found on my website, dominiqueroyam.com. Interested in seeing my process? I document it on my social media, so follow me for more updates. My handles are listed below. Thanks again, and see you in my next video.